Yeah, that might not have been a bad idea. Shawn, where are you located? I know Joe's probably talked to you on the phone a couple times, but
Yeah, we're in Weatherford, Texas.
okay.
You said you were at your, I guess, like a family place last week or something like that.
Yeah, my family on my side of the family, I grew up in West Texas, a little
Okay.
town called Snyder, and we have a family ranch out there. It's been in the family for probably 60 years or so.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
my grandfather ran it, and then when he passed away, my dad ran it, and then my dad passed away probably 4 or 5 years ago. So I've been taking over and having to go out there. It's about 3 hours west of here, so it's not too bad.
Okay, good. And is that south of where all those fires are, or have you guys been
Yeah,
affected by the
it'd
fires?
probably be a good 3.5 hours south, almost
Okay,
4 hours south of there. Yeah, we're south of
good.
Lubbock actually, and most
Oh,
of those
okay.
are north of Lubbock into the Panhandle.
Right, right. Yeah, it's been crazy what I've seen online about
For
all
sure.
the all the stuff they've been having to truck out there, and just
Yeah,
some
it's a,
beautiful
uh,
ranches just absolutely burnt to a crisp. It's crazy, man.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I heard that fire got started from a power line or something. Is that true?
Yeah, I never really heard, but that's probably the high winds. That's usually what causes those out there. And I know earlier in the year they had some moisture as far as snow and stuff, and I think so they got some grass growing a little earlier than usual. And I think then plus the power line probably started it, and they just take as windy as it is there up there, and nothing to stop it. It just takes off like a wildfire.
Man,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
kind of the
destructive.
perfect storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for anybody who doesn't know, Shawn, you just won the 2024 World's Greatest Horseman Championship. So I bet you still feel pretty good about that, huh?
Yes, sir. It's an honor to be, amongst that group of guys or horsemen, whatever you want to call them. So it's pretty special.
Wow. Were you riding one of your own horses?
No, sir. He belongs to Angela Massey and Randy Massey. They live in Knoxville, Tennessee. Right around there, and
Oh, no kidding.
they've owned him since he was a 2 year old. I think they bought him as a 2 year old. And they sent him to me early in his 3 year old year. And then I showed him, that summer in August at the pre-futurity, and I think I won second there on him. And then actually we went on to the snaffle bit futurity his 3 year old year. I got ran over in the herd. I just cut a bad cow that right there at the buzzer just decided he wanted to be back with his buddies, so he ran right over us. But anyway, I didn't get him shown there. But and then a 4 year old year, or summer there, and this 4 year old year we started clicking and just picking up consistent checks, at the major events and stuff. And like I said, he's 10 now, so I've had him for about 7 years. But he's pretty much like our family member. He's been here the whole time.
Hmm.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Um, just the world's greatest. Obviously, there's a bunch of cool competitors as far as the riders, but watching it, um, because you watch a futurity, all the horses kind of have the same formula for how they ended up there, right? But
You,
the world's greatest, it could be
oh,
anything,
oh
and
yeah,
like
you
there's
run.
people showing like old high school rodeo horses and stuff like that. Like it's fun. It's fun to
Exactly.
watch.
Yeah, I guarantee you run those same set of horses and the same set of guys right back in the pen, it'd be a totally different
Yeah,
outcome. It's the way it worked out. Thank goodness.
yeah, that's cool. So, have you had you shown that horse in the world's greatest before?
Yeah, that would have been the fourth year. The first year I showed him, I won third. We ended up third on him there, and then the second year I came back. It seems like I missed in the prelims. I think in the roping,
Hmm.
and I made. And then the third year I brought him back. I made the finals on him, but then the roping took me out of it again in the finals. I broke the barrier and missed. Kind of like had bad luck like Philip did this year in the finals, and this would be the fourth year we took him back. And I told myself I need to get back in the rope horse pen. I mean, that's all I kind of used to do was roping for a long time. But you think it'd be like riding a bicycle, but it's not. The only time I ever practice is like a couple months before this event. We don't rope much throughout the year just because we're so busy with training all the futurity horses and derby horses, and and whatnot. So, but yeah, I made a commitment to myself this year that I need to get back, and I had a practice horse this year to use. I sold my practice horse last year, and that seemed to help just to get on my practice horse and just rope for myself. And but I was like, I don't care how everything else goes, I'm not missing.
Heck yeah. Cool.
So throughout the year, Shawn, what's the biggest show that you look forward to? Is it the world's greatest or?
Probably. I mean, throughout the year, we're so busy with our 3-year-olds. Snaffle bit futurity is a big deal for us, and so I guess just because we put so much time, from January till August, September, October, somewhere in there, that you kind of lose focus of the world's greatest until it kind of rolls around. You're like, oh man, the world's greatest is coming up here in 3 or 4 months. I better start getting ready. So. But I mean that it is one of the. I mean those two are the major events. I would say of the cow horses is the Snaffle bit futurity and the world's greatest. But it just seems like maybe we tend to because we have 4, 5, 6 snaffle bitters, so we're always riding them every day and day out, getting them ready for October. So I would say our focus is more on that than versus the world's greatest.
Oh, okay. And then how many horses are you hauling to each event?
This time of year we start taking our 3-year-olds with us. They'll go on the road with us just to to go and get exposed to being at shows and away from home and all that stuff. So, this time of year we're taking anywhere from I do at 10 to 14 head of horses to ever show and whatnot. And some of those 4 or 5 of those might be 3-year-olds that they're not going to get shown there, but we still take them and camp on them and keep going with them so they're not sitting at home.
Oh, okay. And then like out of that string, yeah, that makes sense. You're giving some exposure and some are coming along and you have ones at different stages. How many of those horses that you have with you are you counting on to be like your winning horse? I think the one you like in the Greatest Horseman, for instance, you had that horse. It's a funny name, right? Two Advil and Moonshine and 2Advil. Yeah, it's a good name. So a horse like that, are you counting on 1 or 2 of them? Like these are the ones I'm planning to win on, or do you have a bit of a wider group that you could possibly win out of?
There's some like I have that horse. He's mainly my main bridle horse. He's as far as I don't really have anything coming up behind him quite yet. I did have one coming up, but he got injured and. It's going to be a deal to where he's probably not going to be see the show pen again. So that kind of set me back, as far as I had one coming up, but now I got to wait for another one. Because usually we don't like to show them in that world's greatest deal till probably the earliest I like to show them is maybe 7 at 6 at the earliest. I mean, that's pretty early, a 6-year-old. Because notice some of those horses were 13, 14 years old, and stuff like that. And in there. And so, usually to me, they're solid and that you can put the pressure on them. And that kind of, setup as far as 4 event deal about their 7-year-old year. And so, like I say, that we do have Derby horses, our 4 and 5-year-olds, and I do have another horse coming up that belongs to the same people. I was third on him at the Snaffle bit futurity. So yeah, it does build your confidence that that I can throw. I got a good bridle horse to throw on the trailer. I've got a good Derby horse to throw on the trailer. And I've got another little Gildan, Smooth the Cat Gildan I really like. But we do have some horses that we just maybe go to the smaller futurity stuff, local around this, Fort Worth area. And there's some derbies that pay pretty decent. Those horses might not be quite good enough to go on like to the Vegas or just to Arizona and some of the bigger major events. I try to, and if I feel like I can't compete on them anywhere, I try to just, tell the client that, this horse would be better off going down a certain, maybe go the roping route or do something different because I don't want to just be hauling it just to say I'm entered. You know what I'm saying? I want them to have a fair shot and try to get some kind of return on their money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. When you're moving that many horses around, I'm always curious what people's logistics look like. Do you guys... Do you have like a, I don't know, 6-9 horse head-to-head type trailer or like a living quarters and a stock trailer with it? Or how do you move everything?
Yeah, like I have an 8-horse trailer and then I've got another 6-horse. So that's about those 2 rigs. One, the 8 horses, it's It's not really a slant load. It's side by side.
Okay.
They go up on a loading ramp and they actually ride, side by side. And it's actually the same length as a 7 horse, but they found out that, without putting a slant in there, you can keep it the length of a 7 horse, but haul one extra horse. And so, yeah, I take that as my main rig. And then we have a 6 horse that, for overflow, like to take the 3-year-olds, we throw them on there. And then you got to juggle around, which horses get along, good riding beside each other, and put them on the trailer and load them. There's a lot of, strategy going into it, because you don't want to, put two that don't get along together, haul them that long distance, and they fight the whole way. So, but yeah, we try to pay attention to what, who gets along with who, and it takes a whole team, to go. I've got another kid that he'll goes with me. Usually in the winter, we only take one rig and just a handful of horses, because the 2 coming 3s aren't, they're not quite old enough to go yet, but they're January year when they turn 3. Like, we'll start taking them in February. That's the first show I took them to, was a world show there in February. And then we took them to another weekend show last weekend at Ardmore, and then they'll go to the trailer with us to Vegas. And so we'll keep them on the trailer now with us all the time. But yeah, it does take a team, to clean stalls and feed and keep track of everything while we're at the shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. That's always any discipline, when you get the trainers and you're moving that much horse flesh around, and then obviously that many people move around. Like, it's something I feel like is kind of understated as like a spectator, because you just see, oh, he rocked up in his chaps and then, roped a steer, right? And it's like, no, you don't understand.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
not even the preparation for the event, but the preparation to get everything there was,
there,
yeah,
all
the logistics are crazy.
You bet. And you have to have all your paperwork in line on all the horses, your health and coggins and all that. So there's a lot to it, and hopefully you just, you don't break down between there and wherever you're going.
Yeah, no kidding.
And but we know a lot of, like, going across country. There's several layover spots that we've been before, so we kind of know which area, if we do happen to have something going wrong, that we can, call, and hopefully somebody will be there to help us get off the road.
Awesome. And so, with this world's greatest, I know you said you wanted to make sure your steer stopping went well this year. And you'd gotten third one year, and you'd come in second a couple times, right? You'd had 2 second places prior to this. So what number was this for you competing in World's Greatest Horseman? How many years had you been doing it?
Man, I'm gonna try to think. I'd have to go back and count the horses. I did compete the very first time on a little Gildan, and that's when they had it at Stephenville, Texas, when I first started doing the cow horse. And I think they took 10 to the finals, and I ended up like 12th or 13th on him. But that was just, I kind of took him just to get my feet wet, to see what it was all about. And then the very next year, I came back with a mare that Don Murphy had trained as a Derby years, and me and my wife and stuff put her in a bridle, and my wife actually showed her before I did in the non-pro, and then I took her on and showed her, but I ended up second on her there at Stephenville, and so that and I showed her one other time. I think I brought her back. They had moved it to San Angelo, and I won 5th on her. And then there was another little mare that I showed in San Angelo, the Smart Chick Aloha, that belonged to the Labradettes out of Louisiana, and I was second on her. So I would say, I've probably showed in this event maybe 8 times, 9 times, because I know there's another horse, Red River Rivalry, that I made the finals on him a couple different times. And then there was another horse I showed that I did not make the finals. I showed him twice. So I would say, anywhere from 8 to 9 times that I've actually competed at this event. And
Okay.
like I said, I've placed second twice, been third, I've been 5th, I've been 7th, 8th, and 9th, been 16th. So it's finally, I said, well, if I just keep chipping away, hopefully I'll fill all the blocks and I'll be number 1 eventually.
Yeah. What do you feel like? Is it just, experience, or did the stars align? Like, what was different about this time?
I don't know. I think that horse has always been the past few years have been a little bit hard roping on. So when I went to the Snout Futurity, I sent him to another guy, Dustin Rogers, and he worked for JDH for a while, like I did. But he's a rope horse trainer just right up the road from us here. And I decided I'm not going to take the MoonshineAndTwoAdvil horse. I didn't take him to the snaffle bit and show him in the open bridle. So I just sent him over there and let him rope on him for 2 or 3 months. And it seemed like, in the years past, it's been like, well, we haven't roped, and now we're going to throw them in the box, 2 or 3 months before the deal, and we're going to start practicing on them, and you never really get them solid. So I was thought, between my roping and maybe the horse being a little green, we just need to, put a little more effort into that part of it. And Dustin helped me out a bunch. I sent him over there, and he just ropes a lot of slow steers on him, did a lot of just tracking and just kind of chilled him out. Because a lot of times them horses going down the fence, they'll get a little chargy and want to get ahead of that cow because that's their job, is to go turn that cow. So in the roping, he was always like, you'd have to kind of rope out in front of him and stay ahead, because he didn't want to rate real good right there, as far as have a lot of rate in him. So and Dustin just went back and spent a lot of time making him rate off, and it helped out a bunch. So that way I could just get on and just go rope for myself and not worry about my horse and my roping. So, but like I say, that was one of the main goals we had as far as in the roping deal.
Yeah, that's cool. That hadn't really occurred to me till just now, because you do hear people talk about, and I'm no cow horse expert by any means, but for example, the cutting versus the fence work, it's kind of a different job, and having a horse that can do both really well is hard. Well,
Exactly.
then like you said, the roping deal, that's like a third job with a cow.
Yeah.
Right? So you really have to define these roles to your horse. Like, hey, when, basically like when you got this set of reins on, we're doing this. And when you got this, and like really make it clear, like, hey, I know we just spent, however many days or however many months really kind of fine tuning this, but the rules are different now.
And then I picked that horse up probably the 1st of December, and then I took him to some winter cuttings, like NCHA cuttings, and just little weekend deals, put him in the 5,000 novice horse. But I did go to a couple of those, and I tried to, I knew he could do I knew I need to school him in the reining, and he's always been good down the fence, just keep him, honest and backed off. But so to me, I felt like I need to really go, to some weekend cuttings and, just keep him, in the rope horse deal. And those are the main 2 events I worked on, was the cutting and the roping to get ready for this deal. And like I say, we went to a few schooling shows just to school in the reining, and pretty much you can just back him off at home down the fence. You don't have to actually go put him in a show situation. We're in the reining, it seems like you do, and maybe the herd work, he needs to go be in a show situation and just get a good schooling and make him be correct, and some of the smaller shows. That way he's ready to go compete at the bigger ones.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, like,
there's a lot that goes into it, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah. For every hard run we make, we go to 2 or 3 schooling shows in between, and those are the ones that aren't much fun, boring, kind of just go and just do lots of schooling. But they're kind of more relaxed though. You can kind of you're not going to that show to win anything, so you don't have any pressure on you. You're just like, hey, I'm here to school my horse. So sometimes those shows I like going to them just because it takes the pressure off, to where you don't have to go every time to go try to win first.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear that. I was telling Joe recently, I'm also no rein cow horse expert. Both Joe and I, we start a lot of horses for the public, and we ride outside horses and sell a few. And, we're just getting going in our own careers. That's why we do this podcast, so we can gain some wisdom and knowledge from people a little further down the road. But there's an event, we ride in a lot of vaquero guys and do the big loop roping and stuff like that. And so I've only competed once at that, but there's a Buck Brannaman has the Pro-Am roping, and it's in Ogden, Utah, near the end of August this year. And so I roped in that last year, and they've started doing a little cow class, for a lot of the ranch cowboys and stuff like that, to come show their horse and show a bridle horse or a hackamore horse or snaffle bit and do that kind of deal. And so since we're going to go there to rope anyway, I decided I'm going to show this little 3-year-old that I have. And so we'll see how it goes. But for one, I've never showed him. For 2, he's pretty darn green. But, I ride him every day. I ride him first every day out of all of the horses that I'm riding. But I told Joe, I was like, right now my strategy to prepare for this is I'm going to go to all kind of shows. I might even go to some shows that aren't exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And as long as they don't kick me out, I'll just go make a ride in their arena. And that'll get me used to riding in front of a bunch of people. because that's something I have zero experience in. But since we're talking to you, how did you get into all this? Because I'm sure you'd probably have a lot of advice for a guy who wants to just get comfortable taking a horse and showing it.
I grew up showing horses when I was in youth. I was lucky to be around, but I didn't show cow horses. It was more of the all around type horses like trail and Western pleasure, the showmanship, and all that. When I look back, I'm like, man, that stuff's boring. But it taught me good horsemanship. I think every stepping stone I've had, even when I was showing, the pleasure and trail horses. And then, I did a lot of the all around events when I was younger in youth. And then I got away. I kind of went to, and I showed cutting too a little bit when I was in youth. My grandmother, she had an old broodmare out in the pasture, and she traded for her because she was in the horse business. And that's kind of what got me into showing. Is she was mainly when I was growing up in the halter horses, but before I was born, she was did the rodeos. Like she was maybe 1956 world's champion girls healer in the PRs in the women's rodeo deal. And then when she got too old to kind of rodeo, she got into cutting horses. This was all before I was even born, but she showed a lot in the cutting horse deal. And then she still wanted to be around horses, even though she was older, but she couldn't ride anymore. So she got into the halter horses. And that's kind of where, when I was growing up, is when I knew her. She had mainly halter horses and stuff. But I just remember all the, the stories and people talking about how she used to, show in the rodeos and do the cutting and all that. So I guess she's kind of, the one that kind of got me started. But anyway, so I did the all around stuff for a while. And then I went off to college, worked for a guy, a cutter, just loping horses for him and cleaning stalls, while I was going to school there in Stephenville. And in the school deal I didn't really like it. So I wanted to get back into training horses. So I did go work for a pleasure horse trainer when I was young, for a couple of years when I was younger. And then I moved back home to the family ranch in between like my early 20s. And about that time, a friend of mine that I graduated high school with, he moved back home at the same time. He was always been big in the team roping, even when we were growing up. And we roped some on the ranch, but I never did any kind of competition team roping and stuff. But so anyway, when he moved home, he went to the finals a couple of years. Mickey Gomez was his name. He made the national finals a couple of years in the heeling, but he got me to roping with him at his house. We'd go practice, and he'd come over to my house, and we just, we moved back home at the same time. And so that's kind of what got me into the roping. And I realized, I'm not really fast enough, or this jackpot's kind of a hard way to make a living, jackpotting. So then I kind of said, well, I kind of like I like the horse show deal, when I was doing it, and now I'm roping now. So maybe I do try to get into horse show roping, like the AQHA horse show roping where they judge it. So that's when I called JD Yates up and went to Colorado and worked for him for about 3 years up there. And he kind of got me back into the show horse deal. And then I met my wife while we were in Colorado, and she always did the cow horse. And I didn't know anything about the cow horse. I didn't, know anything about going down the fence or running a stop and run. We did put some handle on our rope horses and stuff like that, but it wasn't more like a judged pattern type deal. It was just to get them more broke to when we roped on them and stuff. But anyway, so about that time, I moved to Florida for a year and worked for Jay Holmes down there. Didn't really like, living in Florida. It was nice in the wintertime, but boy, they could have that place in the summertime.
That's pretty rough, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, I moved back to Oklahoma and then worked for Lee and Elma Lyles showing rope horses there. And then me and my wife got married, and when I went out on my own, everybody thought I was helping her do the cow horse, and she was doing she'd win all kind of stuff in the non-pro and amateur cow horse stuff. And I was like, I haven't helped her. I don't know. I just been roping, stuff. So Don Murphy was the one that she was riding with. And about that time he moved from California to Oklahoma. And I ended up just going up there and spending time with him. And I kind of like trying to do both. I was trying to do the rope horse deal and the cow horse. And it was just, I was like, you know what, I need to try to pick one event and be good at it. So that's kind of when I stepped away from the roping. And that's before they had all the World Series team rope-ins and all that kind of stuff. And the rope horse securities are paying so good nowadays. But no, it was a good decision. I just went to the cow horse route. Felt like there was more, chances to win money going that direction at the time. It seemed like the horses, as far as buying and selling horses, coming up 2, 3, 4, and 5 year olds, they were, the client would buy, buy a 2-year-old and then show it all the way till they're 5 and then want to buy another one. So it seemed like there was more turnover as far as buying and selling horses in that aspect versus the roping at the time. But the World Series and the futurities have turned all that around for the rope horse deal. But yeah, that's kind of how I started. That's where we're at.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome. So when you guys got married, and I take it your wife, she was already in the cow horse deal. Is she also from Texas or Oklahoma, that area?
She grew up in southern New Mexico, actually. And
Okay.
she grew up on a ranch in southern New Mexico, and her family actually had a ranch up in Colorado also. Is actually in the Rocky Mountains, like West Cliff. I think it's due. Where's that town going? Anyway, it's like due west of Trinidad, like up in the mountains there when you're going into Colorado. And they had a ranch up there too, and her brother was running that, and they sold the ranch in New Mexico and then sold the ranch in Colorado, and they live. Her brother owns a ranch over in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, and her father actually owns a ranch over there too in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. And then her sister, when they dispersed all that ranch, she took hers and bought a ranch in Ringling, Oklahoma, and then so they kind of just separated all the money and dissolved those ranches. But no, she grew up in southern New Mexico, and she did the all around stuff too when we were growing up. Like she did the Western riding, showmanship, and stuff. And I think when she got out of college, or it was going to college in Oklahoma, she got in with Carl McQuistion, and he got her doing the cow horse. And then she rode with Benny Gatrone out in California some, and then she rode with Don Murphy. So, but she was always doing that route. But we have met before. She, when she was showing in youth, but never thought anything of it. But and then all of a sudden when I was like, that was probably when we were 17, 18. And then I saw her again when I was about 24 or 5 when I was working for JD. She came to the same horse show there in Pueblo. And we met again there. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool story. So right there where you, you guys get married, I know I'm just trying to get the timeline straight. I know you said you had been working for some people. Is that when you kind of started to strike out on your own once you guys got married?
Yeah, when I was married, we probably stayed there in Sulphur, Oklahoma for another maybe year or so. And then and I finished up there. I worked there for about 2 or 3 years for Lee and Emma Lyles. But anyway, we were probably maybe 2 years. We might have been married there for 2 years. And then we decided to go out on our own, and I moved down to west of Gainesville to St. Joe, Texas. And we started right there. We had a little, not even a 9-stall barn, a little outdoor open arena, a little house, just on a small acreage. And then that's kind of where I started training out of. And I was mainly doing the rope horse deal when I was doing that. And then I just had a few people start sending me some, mediocre type cow horses. They weren't the MoonshineAndTwoAdvils and the Call Me Mitches and all, all the superstar horses now, but they were, had some ability, and those people want, and I was eligible, back then they have all the different, or they still do, they have the different levels like limited open and intermediate and open and stuff. So I was eligible for the limited open. So I didn't have to, just go set the world on fire, as long as I would just place on them horses in the limited open. And then we kind of just took off from there and everything. But yeah, she always did the cow horse. It was something, and she didn't really do the NRCHA events. She just did AQHA. And that's all we ever did in the rope horse deal was AQHA stuff. And like I say, I didn't even know there was a snaffle bit futurity. I had no idea about any of that kind of stuff, snaffle bit futurity or derbies or all that kind of stuff. I just thought the cow horse was a junior and senior division at the AQHA World Show, because that's all I ever saw, and she showed in the amateur there. They call it the amateur. But yeah, no. And then that's when she started riding with Don Murphy, and he got us into that one mare, the one I was second on in reserve at Stephenville on the World's Greatest. He's that Shine Smartly. He trained her, and that's when we kind of got introduced to that there's the snaffle bit futurity at Reno and all that kind of stuff before they moved it to Fort Worth. So, and I think the very first year I was like 32, 33 before I even showed a cow horse. And but I did fly out there to the snaffle bit futurity in Reno just to see because I had a 2-year-old and he was going to be 3 the next year. So I was like, man, I better go out there and see what all this is about and see how broke I need to get my horse. I don't want to show up and he has still got a tie down on him from the roping or something, trying to train him. So I figured I better go out here and watch this and see, kind of what the competition is and what it's all about. So we flew out there and whatnot. And I think my wife did show that year in the non-pro, but I didn't show myself. And then the little horse she showed in the non-pro, I went ahead and showed him as a 4-year-old at some of the local derbies. And that was the first few years I showed. I probably didn't go do a 3-year-old. I just showed him like little older horses just to get more experience. And I think from a younger perspective, if you can get on a finished horse that way what it's supposed to feel like. I think if it wasn't ever for me showing that one little gelding that my wife showed and me just getting on him and he teaching me to go down the fence. And if I would have never known, wow, this is what it's supposed to feel like, I think it would have been a long, harder to grasp the aspect of what we're after, as far as training. And so that would be my advice is, try to get on a horse and get that feel, like even if you can jump on him, just run and stop him one time or turn him around or whatever, just to say, okay, this is what it's supposed to feel like. And
I've heard a lot of people say, it's hard to teach what you've never felt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, how can you educate the horse to do something that you don't know exactly how it's supposed to feel yourself? And
I mean, I know it's hard for a lot of trainers, like open trainers, that, hey, jump on my good horse here to your help, and you run him down there and stop him and do this because you're afraid they're going to mess him up. But I mean, sometimes you have to do that for your help to even know what's supposed to feel like. So. And like I say, if they ran that horse, my good horse down there 1 or 2 times to stop him, and if they ruin him, then evidently I didn't do a very good job putting him together. So if I can't get him right back, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If like the ride or two undoes like the last 6 years, doesn't say much about you, does it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Shawn, when you first went out on your own and with your wife to do this yourself, did it feel like much of a gamble, or did it seem like a pretty sure thing to start doing it yourself?
I don't know. It felt like that. I was set out, and this is what I was going to do, regardless. And I always had a lot of people say, "Oh, you're taking a long, it's a hard road to take, and you're barely going to get by at first." And that's true, but it's just something that I always wanted to do, I think, and I love, like training horses. So to me, it felt like it never was a job. I mean, at times it was. You're kind of like, man, what am I doing? I could, have a decent job in town or whatnot. But the funny thing is I think what really, and this is a funny story, but when I was in college, I kind of got, when I got out of youth showing and I went to, we were going to go to school, I was trying to get away from the horses because I kind of got a little burnt out. Because we showed quite a bit in youth, hauling down the road and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of got burnt out on the horse deal and was going to just try to do something different. And anyway, there in Stephenville, I went to every grocery store in town and applied, just trying to stock shelves, groceries or something. I'm like, well, hell, I couldn't even get hired doing that. So I was like, I couldn't even get a job at the grocery store. So then I needed to, had to go to work. So that's where I had to go back and lope cutters for the guy in Stephenville. And I was wanting to get away from horses, but I couldn't. And I'm like, man, I said, I guess I was meant to just, have horse training jobs because that's all I've ever had. I was like, I couldn't even get a job at the grocery store. So I was like, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like you find, I mean, a lot of people say that, right, about a lot of paths in life, but especially in the horse industry, especially the onlookers, maybe relatives or people that have money and that's why they have horses or whatever. They'll tell you, oh, that's a hard road. I don't know if you want to do that. But when you talk to somebody who's already succeeded, like that gives you some hope, they'll say, well, hey man, if you work hard, you can do it. So did you have people like that who were kind of saying, hey, Shawn, this is the way, and giving you a hand up, or at least giving you some advice and giving you some surety that you were going to make it?
And starting out, there was horses that, like, I was breaking my horseshoer. His name was Kerry Berger. He passed away just last year, but anyway, his wife, Mary Berger, was the one that won the world, and the older lady that won the world in the barrel racing not too many years ago. But anyway, when I first started on my own, I was even breaking barrel colts for her and for some of her clients. And there was a time where I had more barrel colts in my barn than I did cow horses. And then, just because it was help, they were one on broke and I needed to, make some money and, pay the bills and stuff. So yeah, it was something that I didn't want to do, get the reputation out there of breaking barrel horses. But then it is almost a deal to where they could have kept me so full breaking just, horses like that out that it was almost like, man, and I could charge a little extra, more than I would if I was trying to do a cow horse or whatever. Just, but I was like, I don't really, I'd rather not, chose that route. So, but there was a time where she was just overflowing my barn with barrel horses to ride, and I was like, I don't want to be a barrel colt trainer, type deal. But so yeah, but anyway, we just kept going, and I started getting better horses in, and it helped out too that my father-in-law, he's the one that mounted me on that one mare that second at the world's greatest on. So if it wasn't for him and owning that mare and stuff, and me getting an opportunity to show her, it might have, things might not have started off as good, as far as in the cow horse for me as they did. But so, and I'm saying that you do have to have some help along the way. I mean, so, but you can do it though. And I had another friend of mine say one time, a guy asked him, because he was trying to work like two little jobs on the side. He was actually working for me, and then he was doing some like little real estate transactions on the side, and he was just trying to juggle at both ends. And finally, my friend of mine asked him, he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm just trying to do this other deal in case the horse training part doesn't work out." He goes, and he asked that one guy, he goes, "Didn't you ever have a second plan?" And he goes, "No, if there was a plan, if there was a plan B, plan A never would have worked." So pretty much, when I jumped back into the horse deal, I was like, this is it's either going to work or it's not. And I think, another thing I've seen as far as young trainers coming up is make sure you get in with, the right woman that will support you. Because I've seen a lot of guys come to my barn and want to be horse trainers, but their wife didn't they didn't like that lifestyle, or they didn't do this. They end up splitting up, or the guy gives them giving up on his dream. You know what I'm saying? So I think it was something that Tammy knew what she was getting into when she married me. That, hey, he's all in, so I better, because everything that she did, she followed me all the way from Colorado to Florida, back to Oklahoma, and then to Texas. So I guess she was all in too. So, but I think that's a big deal. You have to have somebody that's very supportive of you to get through the rough times and the hard times, and just not give up on your dream.
Yeah, that's good advice. I guess just for life in general, right? But especially if you're going to do something where you work for yourself and there's going to be some hard years, and you got to have someone who's kind of also committed to the vision.
Exactly, for sure. But I've just seen a lot of guys give up just because and I get it, that they might have a kid on the way or something like that. And that's something that too, when I was growing up and working for other trainers, I was, I dated and stuff, but I wasn't like I was there I wouldn't plan on getting married till I was like 30 or 35, and and I was going to make sure I made it and I could support somebody. But and it's at the same time, so I didn't get married till I was like 29, almost made it to 30. But I was wanting to make sure that I was, that I think I had some talent and I could do this before I, just, settle down. I wanted to settle down with, and get married and all that stuff. But I know it happens, as far as at a younger age. But I just kind of I disciplined myself to say, you know what, I'm going to try to make my career first and then go from there and whatnot. So,
So from that time, like, how long have you been on your own now?
Oh, let's see. I'm going to say I'm 50, probably I'm going to say 20 years now, 18 to 20 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Cause I was probably about 31 somewhere when I went on my own. So, I'm 50 now. So, around that, 18 to 20 year area right through there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool to me. That's one of the cool things about horse sports in general, because here you are just kind of accomplishing something that's like the apex of your sport, right?
Yeah.
At 50 years old. And obviously you've been hanging around for a while through your 40s, but that's really cool to me that you had this big window, so to speak, and obviously you're not done showing now that you've like won world's greatest once, right? Yeah. But it's something that has like been able to fill decades of your life and like
you bet,
work on. It's really cool.
Yeah. and a lot of times maybe that those seconds I got early in my career, I wasn't ready, so maybe it did, because if you win some major title like that, um, I don't think it would have. I've always been try to be real humble as far as go get help from other guys. Something's not going right, I say, hey, can you watch this horse, see what's going on? So I've always been free to go get help. But I could see where some guys, if they would have won it at a certain age or early in their career, that they would say, well, I know everything now, so I don't need to go get any help. So maybe that's why I just kept striving. And there's the other goals. I've never won the Snaffle Futurity. I've been third, but I've never won the Snaffle Futurity. I've never won the Derby. I've never won the Stakes. I have won the Hackamore Classic and the used to be the Circle Wide Derby, which is now the Tres Osos Derby. And but anyway, they're in Fort Worth. But like I say, there's still some titles that the Run for the Million. It's out there now. I've been there a couple of times that got to compete, but haven't actually walked away with the title. So it's never ending. I think maybe Corey Cushing's only won every title there is since he won the American last week or a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. I think he's won every major event we have.
But that's awesome. So the other thing, with 20 years, maybe you can enlighten us more, because Ben and I are very much on the outside looking in from the cow horse thing. But it feels like in my lifetime, at least where I'm at in the country, it seems like reined cow horse has just exploded as a discipline, as a sport.
Yeah,
right?
Sure. It really has. I mean, I think the move, it used to be, they had it in Reno, Nevada, and I think just moving it to Fort Worth to where more people, could come and see and spectate it, and then we have all your the Taylor Sheridans with doing the Run for the Million. That when we were out there at that deal, and I'll be honest with you, I've never really sat down and watched Yellowstone, but that guy has done a lot for our industry as far as getting the horse out there. That hey, there's these competitions and stuff. Because we had people when we were signing autographs for the Run for the Million, they make you sit down and the riders, we sign autographs. There was people that came through that line that said, hey, we never even heard of reined cow horse, didn't know what it was. We just heard this on a commercial. And they're like people from Alaska and way up north in Maryland, Massachusetts, Maine, and stuff that there's no, really cow horse in that deal. And they're like, we just want to come see what this is all about. This is cool, So it's really, to me, it's really broadened just what they've done. And just that type of stuff, and I think that's what's made our cow horse explode, and just moving it to Fort Worth and just good advertisement, and and I think it's going to get even bigger. And now with American, Teton Ridge with American deal, putting on that on, it's just going to get our event to where people see what it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again from the outside looking in, so my fiance. She does hunter jumpers and, throw shows through like USEF and the smaller organizations within that. So I know kind of how that works. I don't really show or anything, but it also seems to me, I'm sure it's got its struggles like everything, but the NRCHA really, everything they've done, they seem like a poster child for how to grow a horse sport. Because
for sure.
just everything you see at those events, and even how they've set things up to be inclusive, like the limited open and stuff like that. They make it so you can have these high end guys like yourself doing world's greatest, Run for the Million, all that stuff. But compared to other disciplines, it definitely seems more accessible early on. So it's really cool to see how they've set all that up.
Yeah, the different leveling is a very good deal. Even for me, there's been years to where you get thrown up there in the open, and you had a good 4-year-old and a good 5-year-old, but if you don't have something coming up behind that, because if you win a bunch of money on them 4 and 5-year-olds, well, they age out. Well, then you have another set of string coming up behind you, and they might not be as good. So here you are stuck in the open to where I like it how they've even had the open to where you can fall back down in the intermediate, over a 3-year average. And that way, even if you fall back down the intermediate, it's helped it's helped times to where it gets you clientele back, because they're like, that he was in the open for a couple of years, and he's dang sure a good enough intermediate rider. So you'll get some of these owners that will send their horse that maybe is not quite good enough for the open, but dang sure good enough for the intermediate. So I think it helps. Even there's been years where it's helped some trainers, young guys, get back on their feet, as far as if they get thrown up here into the wolves and then they don't have anything coming up behind. Well, then it's hard for them to compete and show up if they don't have a horse to show on. But and it's just, and like that way they can drop back down. So I think the leveling system's a great idea as far as to get young trainers started and everything.
Yeah, that's cool.
Makes sense. Shawn, over the years, have you been in a position where you were the one picking the horses that you were going to be showing?
As far as the ones broke out at my ranch, or as far as just like going out and shopping for one?
Like shopping for horses. Have you been? Is that a strong suit of yours?
I tell you, like, I used to have Doug Carpenter, and he was very good at picking some of the best horses to ever compete in the reining, cutting, cow horse, whatever. He just had a very good eye for a horse. He studied the genetics of them and went and spent time as a yearling, like there at the place they were being self-fitted or whatever. He would spend hours around there just watching their attitude and how they handle it around people. I have found some good horses of my own, but I don't say that that's my specialty as far as I can go out and pick you a prospect that's going to win, because you never know. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. I never guarantee owner or anything that's going to be a done deal type deal. But I do have a lot of times what I do, and I have some trainers can't do this. I realize that, but I'll go out and buy some yearlings and 2-year-olds myself, and I'll put a handful of time in on them, 60, 90, sometimes 6 months, and just make sure, it depends on the client, how much they're willing to pay. I'll make sure it's dang sure maybe going to work before I sell it to them. If I don't think I can go win on it, I'm like, no, this is not the horse you need or whatnot. But I used to go out, we used to shop for more yearlings and stuff like that, but we've gotten to the point to where it costs a little more to buy 2-year-olds already, going, but the clients that we're dealing with, they're willing to spend a little more to see what they already have. Instead of getting the broodmare deal to where, well, we're going to breed it, we're going to have a baby, we're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years before we start riding it, and hopefully it's what we like. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of time there to where they're liable to just jump up and pay a little more for a 2-year-old that they can see going around, take X-rays of it, see what his attitude is. But then I do have the clients where I go shopping around and try to buy yearlings that haven't been broke out, or that we can maybe buy for a little less, and do that route also. So it just depends on your clientele, what they want to do. I pretty much sit them down and tell them, this is what if you want to do the broodmare thing, this is how long-term it is. And it might not work out, or you might spend all that money getting it bred, and all of a sudden the little sucker runs through the fence, before you can get a chance to break it out and gets injured somehow. Or we can do the route of buying a yearling and doing that route, or we can just wait and see, go shopping and see after they're already broke out. But you don't want to wait too long. Maybe probably once they're broke out as 2-year-olds, I like to try to get them at least by November, December of their 2-year-old year. Especially if they come from the cutting deal, they'll be really good in the cutting and stuff, but they'll be way behind in the reining. So it seems like you can't wait too long, like in their 3-year-old year, to buy one that hasn't had any reining training, because it seems like it's hard to catch them up. And that's kind of what we do. And then sometimes I'll just go buy some of my own, break them out, just see what they are. And if I feel like they're a pretty good one, I'll tell my client about it. If I feel like I can, it'll go on and be a good horse for them.
Okay. Yeah, because that's a process that I'm always kind of interested in, because from where I am, we're oftentimes making ranch horses, or maybe we'll sell a horse to somebody and it's going to be a safe horse. So almost any grade of horse, unless something's really wrong with it, you can kind of find a place for it and we'll keep it. Or a lot of the clients I ride for, nothing wrong with it, but they're pretty married to the horse they send me, and they're not going to show it, right? So you could tell them, hey, this thing has got this problem or that problem, and they're going to either have you ride it longer, or they'll say, that's not a big deal, I'm just going to trail ride them anyway, right? So I'm interested in that process where, like for you, if you're riding one of your own or riding one for someone else, how soon you're able to identify, hey, this horse is a winner, or hey, this horse isn't going to make it. We need to move him along, or he needs a different career. Because you even see like colts for sale. I'll see photos of colts for sale, and people will, post him with a photo of him doing a sliding stop, just standing out in the pasture or spinning or doing something. And I guess I don't know if that's an educated thing. I think that's probably just clickbait. I mean, it seems like if a colt is doing those movements, like great. Yeah. But is he going to do them with a rider and all that? And then also, if you're starting a horse at, 2.5 years old, 2 years old, will he mature into becoming a better horse, or are the things you see already indicative of how he'll turn out? So I'm curious about that, because like I said, for me, it's not as important how a horse is going to turn out. We'll find a spot for him. But for you guys, you don't want to waste time, working on a horse that's not going to be a winner.
Yeah, like I always have a lot of people calling saying, hey, do you have some older horses for sale, gentle horses? And usually our deal is we just do all young horses. And if they're not going to pan out to what we want, they don't stay here very long. You know what I'm saying? They go on, because I can't, like you say, it's hard for me to tell the client, if they're saying, hey, I want this sucker to be a good derby horse or snaffle bidder, and he's not going to really be good enough minded to do any of that. But so I'm always just tell them, hey, you might as well cut your losses now and go on, or instead of sit there and keep paying me to train him, and then I have to waste my time, on a horse that's not really going to get to go down the road and compete like I want to. And I think there's a lot of horses that get slide through the cracks too. Good horses that, they're not going to be a good 3 or 4 year old, but they're probably going to be a really good superstar as a 5-year-old. But my clients, they're the ones they're looking at, hey, I want to compete at this event, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5, all through their deal. They don't want to just keep him in training. And sometimes too, if they, this 5-year-old, he's all able to make it as a 5-year-old, but these others that made it as a 3 and 4-year-old, they're going to be so much further ahead because they've been going down the road and competing, and they're going to be more solid to where even if this one's, has the ability, but not a really good mind, well, he's going to be far behind as far as being in the show pen and competing, even if you do finally give him the show pen as a 5-year-old. So I always just leave that up to the owner that, hey, that once they get behind, it seems like they always stay behind a little bit, because there's always those amount of horses that they make it all the way through the whole program. They show, they get through the 2-year-old deal. They get to show a snaffle maturity. They stay sound enough to show all the way through their 4 and 5-year-old year. And then but then you have a horse here that got injured as his 3-year-old year. You have to lay him all the way off, and you finally get back on his 5-year-old year. Well, he's going to be a year behind. And regardless, it's hard. And you'll find that one horse that even if he misses half a year, he'll still catch up. But it's pretty hard when, once they get behind. And but like I say, I try to, like, when I break them out, usually if they come in here, say December, January, to be broke out as their 2-year-old year, I can usually tell by about May or June, does this one need to go on? You know what I'm saying? Or this one just completely, he's stiff in the face, doesn't want to stop, doesn't want to give his body parts, or just always fighting you. So, that'll be about when I make my first cut. And then the ones, and you'll have a lot of horses that fool you, like, because we can't really ask them for any speed until, I'm going to say, October, November, their 2-year-old year. I start kind of really sending them down there, September or whatnot, ask them for a little more speed. But, probably all the way through the summer months, we're still trying to go on slow. But I've had a lot of horses fool me, like loping around slow. They'll stop and they'll stick their little butt in the ground. You're like, oh man, this one's going to stop, And then when you start adding speed to it, they fall apart. They cannot handle the speed. You know what I'm saying? So I've had that happen. And I tell clients that. I warn them, hey, your little colt, he made the first cut, but we were still doing stuff slow too, But he feels like all the maneuvers are there and the mechanics are there. But, the true test is about, anywhere from October to January of their 2-year-old year. That's when I kind of start putting a little more pressure on, speeding them up, a little more heat, and you'll see which ones, can take it and which ones can't. And usually by about January or February, I pretty much eliminated and just try to stick to what, as far as 3-year-olds for the futurity of what I think is going to make it. And that's the ones I just like, they're here now, right now. And we've, like I say, I've narrowed it down to 4. We might have started with, 10 or 11 of them, but we've got it narrowed down to these 4 are actually going to, go on and make it maybe and whatnot. And so because then I've got to make room for all the 2-year-olds coming in. So if I still keep some 3-year-olds that all this the whole time that I don't think are really going to make it, and plus the customers are still putting money into them and blah, blah, blah. And some clients appreciate it. Like, hey, I'm glad you told me I don't want to sink any more money into him. I'm glad you told me that he's not going to make it. So we can go ahead and cut it, put a Band-Aid on the bleeding now. And, but then there's some of them like, well, I raised little Susie, she's got to make it. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. She's not going to make it in my program. And then they're liable to send them to some other trainer, and he'll take another 7 or 8 months and then say, no, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, well, I told you that 7 or 8 months ago, but every client's different. So, I've got most of my clients. I'm very fortunate that, if I tell them that, hey, this is not going to be what we need, we try to just, like find another way to go, like be a rope horse. And we've had really good luck with the rope horse securities, selling the rope horse securities. And because, they already got a broke handle on them and stuff. And as long as they have some size to them, those ropers, and get them off, have a way to go with them. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's kind of where my program is. So I don't really ever keep any older horses around to finish them out unless they're going to be a horse like MoonshineAndTwoAdvil that can compete at that level, at the world's greatest level, or some of the major bridle event levels. So,
so 2 questions I have from that. One, you're talking about the trainer-client relationship, and that is one of the things I think is cool just about the kind of Western horse sports in general. You don't necessarily, I'm sure it helps, but you don't necessarily have to come from a big financial backing to get started as a trainer. It definitely helps, but you can basically get to a level where you've got a lot of owners helping you, as opposed to my knowledge is kind of from the hunter jumper world. And there's definitely people who have clients and everything like that, but somebody farther up the family tree really helped them get there, if you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
so, but with that, with the clients, have you, what's more common for you if you say you have a new client? Like, say I'm so-and-so from Maryland who just found out what reined cow horse is, and I want to get involved by being an owner. Do they come to you and say, hey, I want to be involved because we went to the world's greatest and this was great? Or do they come to you and kind of have an agenda like, hey, I want a horse that is going to be competitive at the Snaffle Bit Futurity? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, you like say you have your different clients that some of them don't really know they just see it and they're like, oh, that looks cool. I want to have a horse involved in that. And they don't know all the different levels as far as titles and all that stuff for certain horses and or riders and all that. So they usually come to you just, wanting to get into it, maybe get a good horse everybody wants the winner, and I've always told like that Brandon and Angela Massey that own MoonshineAndTwoAdvil, that was their very first cow horse ever. And I told them, I said, I don't know if y'all realize this, but there's owners that have been in this for years that have wanted to own a horse like that. And their very first horse, you guys own is that one, what I'm saying, one like that.
That's awesome.
And that they've been pretty fortunate as far as, just being, getting good horses and stuff like that. But as far as, you just need to know the level they want to play at. If they're like, hey, we don't have enough money to buy the one to go across country to Las Vegas and Scottsdale and showing that deal, but we want to go to the local shows and show it. It just I sit them down and say, what is your goal and what do you expect out of this? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times the very first thing I'll say is if you're in this to make money, you better go do something else.
Yeah.
and from an owner's point of view, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because, by the time they pay, and I always tell them too, I said, yeah, the cheapest cost is the purchase price of the horse. After that, you have entries, mileage, farrier bills, vet bills. Just, what I'm saying, so they always see this, that's a lot of money for that horse, but really that's the cheapest price is the amount you're going to pay for him, because all the other stuff, adds up. But the hardest thing is getting them people to realize, like a lot of people, I've had clients that, they set a certain amount of money aside and they know that they can, they don't mind it going out in slow increments. It's that all at once, I got to spend this much, for that horse type deal. So where they see it as if I can buy a little cheaper one, well, that's fine. I can put that down. But to me, I've always told them it costs the same amount of money to send, kind of an average horse down the road versus the best horse. Because your mileage is all still the same. Your stalls are the same as all the other horse. Your shavings are the same. Your entries are the same. So to me, the purchase price is all the difference. You know what I'm saying? And I just try to make it clear to them that it costs the same amount to send this type of horse to the road down the road as it does another one. And but the biggest thing is on a client basis is just sit down and see what they really expect. Do they want, if they want the world beater, you need to be honest with them. You need to say, hey, if you want the world beater, yeah, we can maybe take some gambles and try to buy a cheap yearling, and hopefully it works out. But at the same time, you're going to have, even if you charge $1,000 a month, just saying that'd be $12,000 a year. Even if you buy a yearling, you're going to have $24,000 in him before we even get to the show, just in training for 2 years of training. So would you rather take that $24,000 on top of the purchase price and go buy one that we can see was a little further along, or with, like broke out, maybe like a 2-year-old? And so I try to be real, like, break it down, because I've been there before, like I've been on the deal to where, but for me, I could go shopping and buy cheap yearlings because it was just my time training them, to where they actually, a client has got to spend money every month, see that money going out. And so I try to make sure that I be honest with them that, hey, Zane Davis said one time, if you don't feel like putting your own money down at the end of the rainbow to go show that horse, then you probably should not have, keep him in training. If you won't put your own money out of your pocket to go compete on him, if you don't think he's that good, then why are you gonna, at whatever level you are. Now, if you're in the level 1, well, yeah, you don't have to look up here like he's got to beat, the top 5 horses of the whole deal. You got a separate, but if you think he's competitive enough in whatever level you're trying to win on him, then that's fine. Go show him. But, then I thought that was always a good saying that, like if you won't even take your money out of your own pocket to go show him, then you shouldn't really be, hauling down the road for your client to show it at whatever level you're at. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why it's a lot harder for guys like us that are just strictly in the open, because we have to be a little more particular about our horses. Like there might be some nice horses, but I've always thought of it as, okay, if I'm training a horse here at my house and I've got, say, 10, 11 2-year-olds, okay, well, this horse here is like he's number 8 in my string. So if he's number 8 in my string, that means in, this other trainer's string, he's going to be 8 or 9. And then you just go down the deal, like, if he's 8 or 9 in Justin Rice, if he's 8 or 9 in Sarah and Chris's, over there, that'd be 16 2-riders. If you're at Corey's, if he's 8 or 9, well, hell, before I get to the show, I'm already sitting. After 10 trainers, I'm sitting 80th, I'm the one that's 8th in my barn, so I try to just narrow it down to where I just keep, the top 3 or 4. And that's the way I kind of look at it. And that kind of opens, and hopefully, we can find a rider for those others, maybe like an intermediate rider or a limited rider that they can show them and whatnot. And if they're not quite good enough for you in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that was kind of my other question too. You talk about these horses that maybe don't make the program. And so then they go on to maybe being a rope horse. Is there a market in the rein cow horse for, he's not going to be a world beater and he's not going to be the next Derby horse. But some amateur who's really passionate about this, like he's solid and will help them and he's worth money to them.
Yes, for sure. I've got with other trainers before and say, hey, this horse is going to train up. He's good minded. He's a nice little horse, would fit a non-pro type horse. I try not to, I did take a lot of non-pros in there at the time, and here lately I've kind of cut back on doing the non-pro and just strictly the owners I have just want to watch their horses being shown. I think you have to, a lot of times going out on your own, you have to take non-pros because that's what makes the world go around is them. And I know when I did take some non-pros, my theory is yes, if you have a horse that I can't compete on, and I'll help you with that horse as far as if he's not open caliber. But at the same time, you have to have an open horse in training. So I had some non-pros that would strictly keep an open horse with me to ride, and then I would be like I'd help them with their other horse that they showed. And sometimes they leave it there full time. Sometimes they just go in and out with lessons and stuff. But that was kind of the way I put it, because if you open your door to be, yeah, and I'm not saying I don't like to help non-pros. It's just very time consuming to try to be at that level as far as have your horses prepared, and then helping non-pros throughout, if you have a whole bunch of them. So I tried to limit my number, like kept it to 2 or 3 at the time, when I had non-pros. And I do have one now. And I don't consider my wife a non-pro. She's out there and she rides her own, and sometimes I get on them and school them for them, but majority of the time she does a lot of the work herself. But she takes care of herself. But it's very mentally draining as far as trying to get your horses schooled, and then the non-pros show up, and there was days when I would do it. I would just set a day aside that's all I'm gonna do is just strictly non-pros that day and not worry about my open horses. But then when you get to the show, we're here, you show in the open all day, and then all of a sudden then your non-pros want to go school all night. So after about 2 weeks of that, you're like just mentally drained. You're like, because that's the only time you can get in the arena at the show is at night. So I try to I'm either going to go to a show and help non-pros, or I'm going to try to just do my own deal, type deal. But that was kind of my rule of thumb with non-pros, as far as that if they wanted to keep a horse with me full time non-pro, they had to have an open horse for me to go show, and not the same horse. I didn't like to share. I think that's kind of hard on a horse to share. Try to share the horse at the same show. So
yeah. The dynamic you're talking about with you and your wife, I don't know if you know who Aaron Vale is. He's been a guest on this podcast. And he and his wife live down in Florida, and he's a show jumper. I think he's like the highest earning American show jumper in history. So he's kind of at the top of his deal. But it's interesting because he is a pro, obviously, but then his wife is a amateur and shows as an amateur. And in that world, sometimes the prize money for the amateurs is just as much, if not more, than the prize money for the pro classes.
Yeah.
So one thing that they're very particular about, even though she helps run the barn and run the program and everything, one thing they're very particular about is adhering to the rules to make sure nothing would make her a pro, right?
Exactly.
Because in their mind, they can both show the same horse depending on the event, like what show they go to, and make basically the amateur prize money and the professional prize money. So I was just curious, was there anything like that when you guys got going in the cow horse, like things you have to be particular about to keep a non-pro status?
She just rides her own. In the cutting pen, they do have like a non-pro can like trot and lope a horse for the cutting type deal. But as long as you're not pulling it around, schooling on it, go working on a cow or stuff like that, they're pretty, that's the rules, as far as you can exercise, a client's horse around or anything like that. But as far as running and stopping it and turning it around and all that, you're not supposed to do that. But all the horses she rides here at the house, they're usually like, she likes doing the derby deal. And we figured out, like, when we first met, she was doing more of the open bridle, the more horse show type classes. And now as we've went along, she likes to do the derby, like the younger horse stuff. So usually the non-pros I had would show in the non-pro 2 rein or the non-pro bridle or the hackamore. Well, she doesn't do those events, so it didn't really interfere with. She always did the young aged event stuff, like the 3-year-olds, 4 and 5-year-olds. So it never really interfered with her competing against other non-pros in our barn, because I know that's been a big deal to where husband and wife, like another non-pro comes and they're like, well, he works with her more, rides her horse more at home than it does mine. But no, it's just because she lives here and she gets to spend more time in the saddle and doesn't have to, drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to come ride all the time. And
she's married to the trainer. That's got to be a big deal too, right?
Yeah. So we really watched that as far as her not trying to compete against some of the other non-pros in the barn, but she does the ages event stuff, and most of them did the older stuff. But yeah, there are rules like you get she can't just she can't get on a horse belongs to a customer here and go school on it or whatnot type deal. But they can warm them up and stuff like that for us. But that's my little boy. He's 14. That's his job now. He
Great.
likes trotting and warming them up. Sometimes I gotta tell him, okay, that's enough. You're gonna get him too tired before I even get to him, because he will trot one. He
That's
loves it.
great.
So besides your boy helping you out, do you have other people that work for you and start colts
Yeah,
and stuff like that?
I've got a kid here, Brennan Hackman. He come from Cowan Select up at Montana. He was working for them, but he's been with me for almost a year now. I guess it'd be around probably June or so. He'll be here a year. But anyway, yeah, he does all the 2-year-olds for me, and like I say, and I will get on some and just ride them around to see where they're at. Even at this stage, we just started them. Some of them have 120 days on them. Some of them only have 90 days or so. But once he kind of gets them going, I'll get on them, just make sure they're progressing, and then turn them. But he does most of the 2-year-old work, and then Tammy, she'll get on some of the 2-year-olds too. But they're the ones that belong to us. Like we have a handful of 2-year-olds that belong to us, so she can ride those since they belong to us. So she'll jump on them sometimes and see where they're at and pull them around. And then I've got a Spanish guy that he does all the maintenance around the ranch as far as all the handyman stuff. He greases all the equipment, does plumbing, electrical work, keeps all the lawn mowed and all that. And then I have another guy that just strictly cleans stalls. And he cleans all the outside pens, feeds the horses, make sure the waters are all clean and all that. So, and then my youngest boy, he's 14, Hunter. He likes to ride. He's been showing in the youth cow horse the last couple of years, and he does homeschool. He'll school from about 7 o'clock in the morning until 9, and then he comes out and helps us all day long. Like he'll turn back for me, and he'll lope horses and just unsaddle, saddle, and stuff like that. So, but he really likes it. My oldest boy, he showed a little bit. He's 17. He showed a little bit, but didn't really. That wasn't his thing. But he just graduated actually a year early, and he's working for a welder doing construction and building fence and stuff like that. And he likes the guitar. He's really good, big into music, and he can play the guitar pretty good. So he's got him a few gigs around town. They go play out some nights, and then. But yeah, he's just starting to get out on his own. I told him he's 17. He can live here for another year. I told him, and then he said he wanted to move out this year, but I said, no, you're too young to move out. You're only 17. I'll have to wait till he's 18. So yeah, but hopefully he'll get a good start in construction.
Good deal.
Awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a whole crew and some
Yeah,
important job positions there filled. I had another question. So you had the example earlier where you sent your horse down the road to work with a friend who's the roping trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Besides like an example like that, do you have things that you do with your show horses outside of the arena, like whether it's going on your ranch or working some cows or just any sort of like therapeutic, just kind of leisurely type work you do with your show horses?
Some days we'll just go. We've got some acres here. I got probably a couple hundred acres here in Weatherford, so we'll take them out and ride them outside and just go let them be a horse, And we might lope some circles out in the pasture and stuff like that, and do a little softening and stuff. And then, but mainly we're just kind of riding them, just getting them used to everything. We do take them out there. Like we drag calves come May. We go out to the ranch out there, and we'll take some of our 3-year-olds and we'll drag a handful of calves on them just to give them something different, and stuff like that when we work brand and stuff. But yeah, I try to get them out as much as possible. There's some of them that, like the MoonshineAndTwoAdvil horse, his feet are a little, like I can ride him out here in Weatherford where it's real sandy, but out there in our ranch in West Texas, it's a little too rocky, so I never take him out there just because he doesn't have real great front feet, and I don't want to cripple him. So, but yeah, if I feel like they can hold up to it, and they're in we'll take them out there and ride them around on the ranch and just let them be a horse.
Yeah, it makes sense. Besides that, I mean, like, so what you've described so far, especially the last little bit here, talking about your day to day, I mean, it sounds like you have a very busy life. So are you all in on just horses, or do you have time to get away? Do you have like a day out of the week that you take off and you say, I'm not going to ride horses at all?
I probably, I mean, like going out to the ranch in West Texas, sometimes that's getting away for us. Like we went out there just a couple of days ago or last week, whenever it was, and we didn't even take any horses and stuff. We just took our rifles and guns and went hunting and just checked on stuff out there. And I have a guy that lives out there that he lives in town, but just drives out to the ranch every day, and he's there and takes care of everything for us. And I've got part of it leased out to a friend of mine, and then I've got another part of it leased out to another gentleman. And then I only run we got about 60 head of cows out there is all in the part that I kept. So it's we don't have a whole lot of cows out there, but it's just something it gives us something to go do, and the colts and stuff come May, and we'll take them out there and brand on them a little bit and stuff. But eventually, if I that's kind of my getaway. Here, the deal, we go to during the summer months. We live not too far from a beautiful, real pretty lake here in Texas, Possum Lake, PK, Possum Kingdom Lake over here. And so we'll go to the lake. We'll go hang out over there. And my father-in-law has a house over there and a boat and stuff. So we'll go hang out at the lake in the summer times and after when it gets hot and stuff. But other than that, I mean, we're pretty much, when I'm here in Weatherford, we're just I try to take as much time as I can just to ride. We did go on vacation earlier this year. We like to go snow skiing. We try to make a trip every year to go snow skiing somewhere. I like going snow skiing in the mountains, and my wife, she's been complaining that we need to go somewhere warm. So this year we went to Jamaica. So that was a pretty good deal too. We went down there and hung out for. But we usually try to take a couple of vacations a year, like maybe a summer one, and usually we always go on a winter one. Because I like to go snow skiing.
Yeah. That's something that can really get away from you, especially when you work for yourself in the horse industry, not taking time to do something with your family and even day to day, just scheduling what you're going to ride and for how long and what it is you need to get done. And did you ever have trouble with that? Just scheduling out your day and making sure you kind of got to each horse?
Yeah, for sure. Like say the 3-year-olds take so much time. They're very time consuming. I mean, they're pretty much our main priority is the 3-year-olds, every day to get to them. If we have a major event coming up, like, the world's greatest or whatnot, then, our show horses were our main priority to get to them first and do the show horses and then do our 3-year-olds. But usually, like if we have some time off and we don't have another major competition for a couple of months, we'll keep our show horses legged up and keep them kind of, tuned up a little bit here and there. But our main focus is on those 3-year-olds, just getting to them every day, because it just seems like to be ready and be competitive at the futurity. They can't just be standing around, or we try to get to them at least 5 days a week, if not 6 sometimes. And so some days, here at home, I feel like if I've got to take 3 or 4 days off to go out to the ranch in West Texas to check on things, then I'm liable to ride Sunday, and I don't expect my help to be out there on Sundays unless we're fixing to go to a major event or something. But that was another deal. When I worked for JD8, it was 7 days a week. We didn't get any. I worked there for 3.5 years, and we didn't get any day. It was every day. It was 7 days a week. And actually, I hated Sundays because we had to clean stalls. The Mexican boy got Sundays off, but we had to clean stalls and rope. So we did not go out and party on Saturday night on Sunday morning at his place. But I always told myself, and I didn't really complain about it. I'm like, hey, I'm here to learn and better myself. I'm not going to be stuck here all my life, like cleaning stalls like the stall helper was. So I was like, if he wants a day off, that's fine. But I'm just here to get as much as I can out of this, and then try to do my own deal someday. So it didn't bother me, putting in the time, working 7 days a week and stuff like that. But I always told myself, though, if I have my own operation, I'm going to give my time off. My help get time off, because I might have stayed another 2 years, but if I didn't have to work 7 days a week. But after 3 years of that, I was like, okay, I'm ready for something change.
Yeah. Well, it's funny on a small scale. That's the exact interpretation of that saying, that hard times breed hard men, and hard men breed soft times, and then soft times breed hard men. Because it's true. Like, you got to pay your dues, but at the same time, you work a job like that, and you think, well, someday when I'm the boss, I'm going to give everybody a little more time off and pay them a little bit more and give them a little more compliments. And it works out, but I don't know. Sure. Maybe that next generation, they'll be right back to their hard times again. No, but I'm totally right there with you. So that place that you were working at, JD's, how many horses were they running?
He was probably, we had close to probably 40 rope horses probably. And, but he was at the time, he was still rodeoing a lot, and he'd go down the rodeo trail. So there'd be times where I wouldn't see him for 2 or 3 weeks because he'd be on the road rodeoing. And so we'd be home. My job was mainly just to break the colts out for the rope. They're going to do the horse show rope horse deal. Uh, and I spend time on those colts and stuff and keeping the show horses legged up. So when he did come in off the road, he could kind of go to work on them instead of having to, 2 or 3 days of getting the fresh out of him. Then he was gone again. So I just tried to keep the edge off of them, and we track some lead steers around on them, do some, work them on the log, calf horses, work them on the log, and all that kind of stuff. And but he didn't keep a lot of. He kept a set of rodeo horses around, but mainly we might have to exercise them ever so often. But he had another kid that kind of helped him with those. That I didn't have to monkey with the rodeo horses, just to keep them legged up. So in case he wanted to, come off the road and swap horses and go again. But no, it was a. He was dang sure a go-getter and a hard worker, and it showed. I don't know how many times he won, like 30-something HHA World titles or something, and they roping. And youngest guy to ever qualify for the NFR he was like 13 or 14 years old. So he from day one, even when he was little, he was had work ethic. And when it was funny when I got there. I was sitting there with the very first weekend I was there, and I thought, well, most training facilities I work for, half a day Saturday, get Saturday afternoon off, but we worked all day Saturday, so I was like, we'll probably get Sunday off. So I knew we had to feed that morning, so we fed. My apartment was in the barn, so after I fed, I went down. I was just sitting there laying on the couch reading a book. Well, here JD's dad and another guy that worked there come walking through my apartment, and they're like, hey, we got to go saddle some horses up. Let's go. So I knew right then, I was like, well, I guess we work on Sundays here too. So off we went. But no, it was a good deal. But
so you're talking about your schedule with your horses. I've always been curious about this with the futurity horses. And I know you said once they get their 3-year-old year, it's time consuming. What is that 2-year-old year look like? Is there any time off, or are they more sporadic in how they get ridden, or
a little more? Maybe they have a little more time off probably because this time of year we're camping on them, every day, just trying to get them gentle down, and it seems like the more you can touch them or be around them and stuff on a routine, they gentle down a little sooner and stuff. But as far as once they kind of start staying between the reins, kind of stopping a little bit, starting to turn around, we might just do the 2-year-olds every other day. The guy, because if he's mainly the only one doing them. So once they get caught up to a certain deal, if we have another batch that comes in a little further behind, he might camp on them a little more and just give these are a little further ahead. Just give them 1 or 2 days off more, a week or whatnot. And there will be times to where we'll be gone like to a show for a week or so, and I might have to take him, the kid that does my 2-year-olds, I might have to take him with me. So they all live in outside pens. Well, I try not to keep my 2-year-old stalled. They all have runs and sheds and loafing sheds. That way they can kind of keep the excess energy off of them. I mean, we can do that down here where we're at. It doesn't get too cold or bad weather throughout the winter. But majority of mine, I don't move them in until about, maybe I'm going to say December of their 2-year-old year. If once they start, realizing they're going to make it, we'll move them in. I do have a few clients that, maybe they want to send them and break them out and just keep them, maybe try to sell them. So I have to keep them maybe inside in a stall, just to keep their hair coats looking a little better as far as sell value. A lot of my clients are like, well, just to see if he makes it. If he doesn't, we'll get rid of him and, send him down the road or do something else. But I like to try to keep them turned out. And but there'll be times where they have a week off. The 2-year-olds will when we go to a show or whatnot. But majority of the time, they're getting rode at least 4 days a week. On average, where the 3-year-olds and usually once the 3-year-olds turn, like this year, I just have me and my wife just have 4 head, And the kid who working for me, he won't have one this year because he just started. But so we didn't have anything for him. But he'll probably have something next year. But I try to let the guys show a little bit. You know, that are working for me. Get because
cool. Yeah.
show some. But at the same time, I don't want them to have 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 of them. You know, because there's a lot of times where that there would be like several intermediate limited open type horses that could stay, but then he'd be showing more than me. You know what I'm saying? I would be spending all the time getting his horses raced. So I'll kind of like, even if there's like 4 or 5 of them to choose from, I just say, hey, which one do you like the best? Which one do you think fits your style better? And that's the one we'll go on with. And I'll maybe send the others on out instead of keeping 3 or 4 limited open horses around, you know. And sometimes I'll keep 1 or 2, you know, for them guys. But majority of the time I just try to keep 1 because it takes up a lot of time. Because while they're trying to school 2 or 3 of them, I didn't need them. I need them doing something else for me, you know, type deal. I mean, I try to let them have an opportunity to show, and because that's what they're here for. But at the same time, I don't want to just turn everything over to them, and then I'll be the one working for them. You know, I'm like, man, you got 5 head to show, I only got 2. You know, because there's only 2 that were good enough to be that open level. But yeah, we try to keep a couple of them around just for them to show to. And some clients are fine with that. Some are like, yeah, I'll let him show them. But then some of them are like, well, if he's not good enough for you to show, then we just need to go send him on down the road and get something else. And some clients are pretty good about. Now I get it. That client, he don't want to spend his money for some other guy to learn on. Learn on his bill. But at the same time, we're trying to make your horse as good as possible and put him in a situation where he can maybe win something instead of, even if he's not that great of a horse, it's silly for me to show him because you'll just be donating your entry fee. Even if I'm showing him, he don't matter how good, if he's not good enough, he's not good enough, So I try to explain that to the client that like, hey, you know what, this kid, he can show in this level 1. There's still quite a bit of money to be won in the level 1. And so it's a gamble because he's, some of those guys never showed much. So they're kind of learning, the experience of showing and stuff. So, but it all works out good.
With, sorry, Ben, did you have a question?
We might be about to ask the same thing. I'm not sure. You go ahead.
Okay. So with these young guys that you, take under your wing, as you mentioned, they're like starting the colts for you and everything. So they probably, I assume, have some sort of background there. What do you feel like helps them, besides just the practice, helps them become a good showman? Because with past guests we've had on here, no matter what discipline they're doing, they've talked about how there's kind of a difference between someone who's like, you're a horseman, but then you go in and you've also got to be a showman,
For
right?
sure.
And that's like almost a completely different, not completely different, but it is a different skill set, and you can have one without the other.
Yeah, I know guys that are great showmen, and they're not. To me, I wouldn't ride behind them as far as their training, but they can show the crap out of one, But at the same time, it's vice versa. There's guys that can train them, but it's just it's just you have to get in the show pen a lot, and get in certain. You have to get in certain situations and learn from them situations. As far as even if it came out and the situation you were in, you made it worse or it fell apart. Well, instead of walking out being mad about that, try to learn something from it. It's like, I remember probably the prime example for me was one year we were down there at Stephenville and I was showing a Derby mare, and I went down there and I was boxing her on the end, and I was sitting really good after the reining and herd work, had a chance to win this thing. And so anyway, and I go around the corner and this cow just goes out in the middle, out in the open field. Well, I kind of get him stopped down there. I make a turn. Well, and then the cow stayed in the middle of the arena. Well, instead of me hustling up there and making another open field turn the opposite direction, because I made a left turn first, was if he would have stayed out there, but I thought I had to be on the fence. So I just tracked the cow all the way back to the fence and put him on the fence and then set it up again and went down. And then I walked out, and I didn't and luckily there was guys there that, you know, saw what happened, you know, professional trainers like, hey man, if you would have just done this, and they actually came and gave me advice. But you know, there's some guys that would have saw that situation and been like, well, maybe somebody will tell him. But I was fortunate enough that they came and told me that, hey, if you would have jumped up there, you made a huge first turn. If you would have just ran up there and jumped up there and made a huge second turn and circled up right there in the middle of the pin, you would have been huge score. And I was thinking, well, and you know, like, well, crap, I thought I had to get him back to the rail to get him turned. You know, it was just one of those green error mistakes. And I just was kind of trailing the cow around instead of after that first turn. But yeah, so if you'll just come out and learn from your mistakes, you know, instead of, oh, I got a bad score, you know, poor pitiful me type deal, which we all do it. Don't get me wrong. We all throw our stuff in the dirt. But anyway, yeah, but just try to get in the show pen as much as possible and when you can, and just try to, you know, learn from your mistakes and stuff as far as different situations, what you should have done. I see a lot of guys, you know, like they'll come out of a turn down the fence and they'll just make the decision of maybe circling the wrong direction. And then instead of going in between the out gate, maybe in the cow, they pushed him into the out gate, and then the cow gets back to the fence and kind of ruins the whole run. Just little stuff like that. If they would have, and that's just from being in there and going back and watching your videos. I was really big about watching videos, like, and I've gotten to where, like at the pre-works and stuff, I'll have somebody video my colts and stuff, and that way I can kind of watch and see what's going on, because sometimes it feels a lot worse than it looks. You know, there's been times where a horse run down there and stop, and I kind of get on to him because I'm like, man, it's kind of rough stopping. But at the same time, if I would have sat back and maybe had somebody video it and looked at the picture, I'd have been like, well, you know, it didn't look that bad, you know. So, and that's just the deal of being a showman, is just trying to show through that stuff. And I'm getting better at it, but back earlier in my career, I was like, if something barely went wrong, the hose, everybody knew about it, because I was like, slumping my head, slumping my shoulders, like, you know, type deal, or doing some kind of body language type deal. And they're like, and a lot of times those judges, even though you can feel it, they can't see it. So it's just, you know, being a good, you know, trying to better yourself in the show pen and learn from your mistakes is what I would say, you know, and just get in the show pen as much as possible and try to get yourself in different situations.
Yeah.
And watch lots of videos of your runs and stuff, and then watch videos of other people's runs too. You know, I would always do that a lot of times. I study lots of videos.
We had Joe Walter on the podcast one time, and he was talking about his show career a little bit. And when he got into it, his friends were like, well, you know, you're a really good horseman, and that might actually make it be a little harder to be a showman. And he said, yeah, I figured out pretty quick there's a reason why the engineers don't drive the race car, you know, because you can just, like you said, feel every little thing. And even though it might look all right and it's going okay, you know, you feel that thing that you've been working on the last couple months.
Me growing up in the when I grew up doing the pleasure horses and the all around type horses, like mainly trail obstacles and stuff, you had to know and feel where every foot was. You know what I'm saying? Like going through those trail obstacles, backing through an ale, or walking over logs, or trotting, you had to judge that stride, just like a jumping horse, you know, judge a stride to the jump, and you had to kind of know where every foot was. So I think, and my wife always says sometimes, she goes, I think that sometimes bites you in the butt, because you have so much feel that, you know, you won't ever, you know, on a cow and stuff, sometimes it's not going to feel as good as it, you know, should. And they might be shouldering in there or whatnot, but it's just and sometimes I think I can feel that kind of stuff too much, and I try to fix it instead of just like, you know, the judge couldn't tell he's dropping a shoulder in there or whatever. So just, you know, roll with it and fix it next time, you know, in the practice pen or something. But I think, yeah, some guys can have too much feel and too much control, and it hinders your ability just to go show and, you know, and whatnot. So I've kind of had to balance that myself. Trying not to keep so much control over them. There's some guys that I'm like, man, I wish I could show like him. He's just so relaxed and just pitches loose. Just you know, throws caution to the wind and whatnot. Where I'm going in there, sometimes feel like I'm not trying to make a mistake. And I think, you know, I went to one of those judges seminars, and that's the biggest thing I got out of that judges seminar is go in there and act like you're trying to win something, you know. And if you go in there and kind of, you know, set the pace, or like show them that, hey, I'm trying to win something, instead of going around there trying to be safe and whatnot, then they're ready to mark you, and try to give it, if it works out.
Did you feel like that judges seminar, I mean, obviously that example, but overall helped you as a competitor?
Yeah, it did. And like I say, I need to go to more of them. I've never been the type of person to could sit in one spot very long. Like as far as judging all day long, I don't think there was no way I could sit there all day long and judge. Uh, but yeah, it did open my eyes as far as what they're looking for, what style of horse. I mean, every judge is a little different. They might not. That's why we have at those major events have a high and a low score thrown out. But overall, until you sit there and probably do it all day long, it looks like it would. I mean, it's not very easy probably to, to try to make the right calls and do all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, it all comes out, as far as the high and low throwing out and the scores and stuff like that.
Yeah. My, my fiance, I guess 2 years ago now, just went through getting her license to be a hunter judge.
Oh
And
yeah,
she said that was one of the most helpful things for her showing, was having to sit down and like go to the classes to be
for
a
sure.
licensed judge, because she could understand the point system, understand like, well, if I do this, it's not a big deal because that's only, a half point here or whatever. Whereas, if you grow up in that world, you might think, well, that's just something you're not supposed to do. And so you make a way bigger deal about it. That was just the example she gave. But she felt like she finally understood how to really play the game, so to
Yeah,
speak, from
exactly.
that judge's
Yeah.
from getting that license. So
And I try to, like, at the shows, I try to go look at my judges cards, even if I have a low score or high score or whatever, just to see where I can improve, or where they, what I'm saying? Like if, because you'll look at your card one time and the left spins and you're reining, every judge will either zero them or plus half or whatever. And you're like, if they're all zero, that means, hey, you might need to work on your left spins.
yeah.
What I'm saying? If every judge has a zero, and so I try to go look at my cards and just see where I can improve each horse, because every horse is different. It has one might have better set of left turns, the other have better set of right turns. So I just, try to work. I try to work on their weaknesses to make them better and whatnot. So.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't competed at a lot of stuff, but the first time that I was aware of that difference is I competed in a few of those colt starting competitions, which
Oh yeah.
my personal opinion is it's not a great thing to compete at, but you should compete at something like reined cow horse. But yeah, at the end of the day, at the end of 3 days, you're like, gosh, I thought I did pretty good, or I thought that guy did pretty good,
Yeah,
and then
for
you go
sure.
look at the way that the judges scored it, and then you realize what they were looking for, and they were looking for a lot of showmanship. They weren't really looking for. They were looking for some horse training skills, but they were looking for
Yeah.
showmanship. They were looking for
Yeah.
guys who could talk while they were working. I mean, all kind of random stuff.
Yeah.
And so right away you're like, oh, maybe this isn't the thing to do if I'm trying to become a real trainer. I don't need to be doing colt starting competitions. But again, it was a
Exactly.
very good example of like real down to earth tactile performance versus showmanship, which I'm going to have to sharpen up on a little bit if I want to do well at all at showing my little horse. But I wanted to ask you, did you make it to that the American Rodeo with Teton Ridge?
No, we did not. We were actually at Ardmore at a school and show. We took some horses up there to school. We have another major event coming up the 1st of April in Las Vegas. And I had a couple Derby horses that I did not show at Fort Worth. And so I haven't really got a chance to school them. And they had a school and show there in Ardmore. So I figured I better go up there and school them and whatnot. So we did get to watch a little bit of it on the webcast deal, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it looked pretty exciting. It made me think, like, we had a guest recently and she doesn't show or do anything like that. She's a gal that was in tech in Silicon Valley and then left that and got back into horses, and she's building an app for people in the horse industry. But she kind of sees things from a different angle, but she had made a comment that the horse industry is similar to the surfing industry 20 years ago in terms of heading towards a boom. Now, I'm not a surfer. I don't know a ton about it, but I got the impression that clearly surfing has kind of boomed, and in a certain aspect, in the same way horses are kind of heading that way. But as a guy who's like in the show world and you're in the, I don't know, you're in the front lines of that part of the horse industry, would you say that's accurate? I mean, have you seen a bit of change over the years? And like, what do you think is the most significant change if it is heading in that direction?
Yeah, the prices of horses has it's went way up. Like before, I mean, you could go to a futurity sale and buy a yearling or 2-year-old or whatever you're looking at, and to get an open like top caliber horse with the bloodlines and the whole 9 yards, you could, I mean, easily spend, I'm gonna say 70, 80,000, and now you better at least take 100 to 150,000 to the sale to buy that, the same type of horse. So, and I think it has to do with our payouts. I mean, the Snout Whip Charity now pays, I think, 200,000. This run, the world's greatest. I remember the very first year I won second in it. I think I might have walked out of there with 15,000 win second, or 20, 20,000 or 20, something like that, 25. But now it pays 150,000 to win that. We're getting now to where the run for the million this year is going to be the first year. It pays $500,000 to the winner. Before it was 50,000 to the cutters and the cow horse guys. The reiners won $500,000 for the last couple of years, but now they're going to make it even across the board to where the reiners and the cow horse guys. So I think you're going to see those bigger payouts. So that, of course, horses are going to go up and whatnot, and it's just making that. And then that's the top end going up, but then you're making the horse that was a $40,000 or $50,000 horse, it's going to be move up to your $70,000 and $80,000 horse. Where now your $70,000 and $80,000 horse is going to be your $100,000 and something horse. So it keeps going up to where I think at that cutting fury sale, as long as you rode it in there and it didn't buck you off, it bought $20,000 just for a 2-year-old, just to what I'm saying. And it seemed like a couple of years ago, regardless of what it did, and if it didn't even watch a cow or nothing, as long as it didn't buck you down, they'd bring 20,000. So yeah, horse prices are kind of crazy, and who knows? I mean, it might be like everything. They might not have hit their high yet, but it's eventually got to come back down, I would think. But who knows? I mean, as long as the purses stay up, as far as all these events paying, big purses, I think you're going to see the horse prices stay up.
Yeah. And because of that, are you seeing a pretty good influx of younger trainers that are wanting to get into it?
Well, it's hard. To me, it's harder for the younger trainers nowadays to get into it, just because there's not those type of clients, that can just jump out and spend that much for, they might have, $20,000, $30,000 to go spend on a horse. Well, I mean, you have to shop around and just probably, try to get a yearling and hope it works out. Because, or, like I say, I mean, you can buy a 2-year-old that it just depends on what level you're playing at and what level they want to play at. And so, like, when they come to me, I tell them, hey, I'm strictly just eligible for the Open this year or whatever it is. I mean, and on that 3-year average, I mean, more than likely, I mean, I'm going to be stuck in the Open for the next 3, 4, 5 years probably. But it just kind of depends on where you're at there. You can say, well, you know what? I don't really have a couple of good Derby horses this year. I'm not going to go very much. And I'm at the bottom end of the Open, being in the top, whatever it is, 25, 30 riders. But I'm in the bottom end of those riders. So I might fall back down the intermediate. So then you can go shopping for your client, knowing that you might fall back down that intermediate a year or so. That's where that, I was telling you about, it's good for business as far as fluctuating in and out of that and try to get yourself built back up again. But as far as where I'm at, I pretty much have to tell a client, if you want to go to the Snout Whip Charity and have a chance to actually win, make the Open finals, you better at least, if you don't have a horse yet or didn't raise it, it's going to cost at least $100,000 just to go find one probably. And and right now at this time of year, their 3-year-old year, if the good guys they're not going to get rid of their good ones, right now. I mean, if they know they have a good one, you've probably missed the opportunity to buy one, and unless they put some outrageous price tag on it, and that's just the way it is. I mean, you'd hate to sell the best one out of your barn, knowing you might have a chance to be in the top 5 at Snout Whip Charity, and unless your client just definitely wants to sell it, and so then you're trying to strum up a client that'll leave it in your barn, another client, that'll buy it and leave it in your barn. But that's just kind of the way it is. It's whatever it's kind of the business of whatever. If the client, says, hey, I need to get out, and he's a good horse, and you got to sell him. But either that or that, if the client wants to stick with you and see if y'all can, win something at the snap a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, the cost is so much higher, and it's probably tricky
I remember
for a younger guy to get the stats, right?
Yeah, the first colt we bought, and the times have changed this much, that he was a little gelding, and he cribbed, and he was a reject cutter, and he was we bought him in his 2-year-old year, I think, towards the end of his 2-year-old year, but they had him priced at $5,000 and dollars just for a little reject cutter type deal. And I said, but he cribs. And I said, all right, we'll take $3,500. I'm like, all right, deal. And so our very first alphabet we bought for $3,500, and my wife showed him, and I think we showed him for a couple of years, and we won like $30,000 on him maybe, and then turned around and sold him for $35,000. And that's kind of how I got started as far as, I had to show my own. And that's another thing is, to me, if you want to get in the show pen, and it's hard to do. I know a lot of young trainers can't afford it, but if you can, get your own horse and try to make sure it's a good one, that you can at least go place on him and stuff. And regardless, you need to decide if you want to flip him and sell him and make money, which is fine. But at the same time, if you think he's good enough to go show and win a little bit on, it's more a wise decision to keep him and go show him yourself and try to, get your name built up a little bit, get your name out there, and plus get some runs under your belt. Because a lot of these owners nowadays are all, they're all, it's all about, spending that money, where they're like, well, why would I spend money for Joe Blow to show him, and at a lower level where I could go pay, one of these bigger guys to go show him. But at the same time, it might not be a good enough horse, what I'm saying, to show in that open caliber level. But some of those clients don't realize that. They think, oh, this, even though this horse is showing in the lower level, he's still a great. If Shawn was on him, or Justin Wright or somebody, he'd win all this. Well, that's not necessarily true. That horse might not be that good of a horse to compete at that, at that level up there. And so, but sometimes you can't convince that owner that, your horse is right where he needs to be, right down here in this, and let this other kid show him. And that's the best chance he'll have to win some money. But but if you don't have, and I've seen a lot of that, like these guys, these young trainers work their butt off, and they'll go and they get this horse and they show it a few times and they're nervous showing. Well, things don't go right. They don't win place in their first couple of events. Well, the next thing you know, the owners just yanks it out from underneath them, and then they're left not having a horse to show. You know what I'm saying? So so to me, if you can, try to find your own horse and train him up as good as you can, and just go and get in the show pen as much as you can. And it's going to cost you money out of your pocket, but at least you'll have a horse to go show. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And to where other times the owner might yank it out from underneath you, and you're like, well, crap, I don't have another. This one's not going to be ready for another year. So you're sitting out another year out of the show pen, and then hopefully the same thing doesn't happen once you get that one trained. You know what I'm saying? This is hard to make it, in the younger trainer deal. And I think the younger trainer deal is just harder because there's the quality of horses. It's more expensive to buy them. Like, versus when I bought mine, it was like 35. Well, you might hear that today, but probably not. You know what I'm saying? The cheapest horse you might get bought is like $10,000, but just for a prospect, type deal, and hopefully it makes it. So, but yeah, it's a lot harder, I think, nowadays for a young trainer to make it. And I just had the opportunity I had some outside clients for the rope horse deal. We already had that one trained up for my wife. She had an older bridle horse that I got to go show a little bit. So it was just it's kind of worked out good in my favor to get started. I got a good start, as far as showing an older horse and a younger horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Well, Ben, you got any other questions for Shawn?
I don't right now, no.
Okay, cool. Well, we honestly, I could sit here and talk to you all afternoon, but we don't want to hog you, because I'm sure a guy like you got other things you could get into if you had the time. But man, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Where are you guys out of?
I actually live fairly close to Knoxville. I'm in Southwest Virginia, just west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So
Okay.
Knoxville's a couple hours down the interstate from me.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I live in Forsyth, Georgia. So we're about an hour
Okay.
south of Atlanta and about, 3 hours from Savannah, kind of
Okay.
along I-75. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, we used to, when I lived in Sarasota, Florida there, we used to drive all up there and go to like Harriman and Clemson and all those show and rope horses when I worked for Jay Holmes down there in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I actually used to live in Clemson, or just outside of Clemson for about 4 years after college before I moved back to the family ranch. Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, likewise, man. Hey, don't hang up. We're just going to stop recording, but don't hang up yet.
Okay.